and the rule of law. For over a year, Russia has engaged in an unjust war against Ukraine, committing atrocities at the largest scale of any armed conflict since the Second World War. And for over a year, the people of Ukraine have fought with courage and conviction to protect their country. They have worked with unflagging resolve to record the brutalities committed against thousands of Ukrainian men, women, and children, and to hold the perpetrators of those atrocities accountable under the law. They have risked and sacrificed their lives in the defense of their country. The United States Department of Justice stands with them, and we are doing everything in our power to achieve the accountability necessary for true justice for Ukraine. During our meeting today, the Prosecutor General and I exchanged updates on our work with the Ukraine Joint Investigative Team, or JIT. Anchored by a partnership between 7 countries, the JIT is investigating core international crimes committed in Ukraine. During my trip to Lviv last month, I signed a memorandum of understanding that formalizes and facilitates our cooperation and coordination with the JIT. As we discussed today, to further strengthen this partnership, the Justice Department will detail an experienced prosecutor to the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, which is hosted by the JIT. The prosecutor will be based in The Hague at Eurojust, the European Union Agency for Criminal Justice Cooperation. And he will provide access to the significant departmental resources that we have deployed in response to this crisis. The Justice Department is also planning to send a resident legal advisor to the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv this summer. That advisor will work with our Ukrainian partners on a variety of complex justice sector issues. In addition to these efforts, Andriy and I discussed the department's continuing work to hold the Russian regime accountable for its atrocities. Prosecutors working with the Justice Department's War Crimes Accountability Team continue to work closely with our counterparts in the Prosecutor General's office to investigate specific crimes committed by Russian forces, including unlawful attacks directed at civilians. Our Ukrainian colleagues are also assisting us with our investigations that are led by the War Crimes Accountability Team into potential war crimes over which the United States possesses criminal jurisdiction. These include crimes in which American citizens have been harmed or killed. At the same time, Congress has recently expanded the Justice Department's authority to prosecute alleged war criminals who are found here in the United States. This means that in the years and the decades ahead, Russian war criminals who set foot in our country should expect to find themselves before U.S. courts of law. Meanwhile, our task force Kleptocapture, a team of prosecutors, agents, analysts, translators, and other personnel, continues to bring prosecutions and effect seizures against sanctioned enablers of the Kremlin and Russian military. And as I discussed the last time that Andriy was here, we are exercising new authority granted by Congress to transfer certain assets that we have seized from Russian oligarchs for use in rebuilding Ukraine. I want to acknowledge the many Justice Department personnel involved in this work. I also want to thank our domestic and international partners for joining us in this important effort to support the investigation and prosecution of atrocities in Ukraine. We will do everything we can to help Ukraine achieve justice for its people, and we will work for as long as it takes to hold accountable under law those who bear responsibility for the Russian regime's brutal crimes. Now I'm going to turn this over to the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney General. It is just so good to have the Prosecutor General here with us at the Justice Department, particularly because this week he and I both will be appearing separately before committees of Congress to speak about Ukraine, to speak about our collective response to Russian atrocities committed over the last year. And as the Attorney General noted, our resolve at the Justice Department has never been stronger in this work. We are dedicating more resources to ensuring accountability and to combating those that facilitate the Russian war machine. Those new resources include prosecutors working with international partners on investigating war crimes and other atrocities and the crime of aggression. And those resources include continued efforts to freeze and seize any Russian assets that we can under the authorities that we have. I'll be up before Congress, as I said, on Wednesday to thank them for the tools that they have already given us to hold Russia accountable, and I'll also discuss what else we can do and what new tools we might need to ensure accountability and our ability to respond to Russian aggression and to ensure justice for Ukraine. Mr. Prosecutor General.
Thank you, Attorney General. Dear Merrick, I'm grateful to you and to your team for the support of our international accountability initiatives, namely the recent decision to appoint a prosecutor to the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression and contributing to the work of the Joint Investigation Team. Launching the ICPA is the first practical step towards establishing the special tribunal for the prosecution for the crime of aggression. And we welcome the public position of the United States in support of the creation of the tribunal, recently voiced by the Ambassador Beth Van Schaack. Another important aspect of our cooperation and support by the Department of Justice colleagues is the strategic advice on investigating and prosecuting Russia's war crimes, as well as on continuing reforms and strengthening Ukraine's anti-corruption infrastructure. We greatly appreciate the decision to designate the resident legal advisor to Kyiv by the Department of Justice. This will further solidify our communication and cooperation. Despite the war, Ukraine remains committed to pursuing the reform of the law enforcement sector and strengthening the capacity of the prosecution service. In recent months, we have been working closely with international partners to develop the concept note on support to victims and witnesses of war crimes and other international crimes. And we would greatly appreciate US assistance and expert advice in this direction. We also continue our systematic cooperation in a number of priority areas. First, as Attorney General mentioned, cooperation with Task Force Kleptocapture on the confiscation of the assets of Russian oligarchs involved in funding the war. As we know, the US colleagues are expecting results in another forfeiture case, and we are intensifying our work to freeze the Wagner Group's overseas assets, to deprive the group of the resources to finance its criminal activities in Ukraine and worldwide. Second is information and knowledge exchange. We are grateful for the DOJ efforts aimed at organizing a study visit to the United States for the Specialized Environmental Prosecutor's Office of Ukraine. And we would welcome similar learning programs for prosecutors specializing in combating cybercrimes. And third is investigation and prosecution of unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children and joint efforts to return forcibly displaced children home to Ukraine, to their families. Our common goals are to build a web of comprehensive accountability for international crimes, allowing no impunity for war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and the crime of aggression, and to strengthen global coalition for justice so that there are no safe havens for perpetrators anywhere in the world. I believe that if we uphold our unity and cooperation, these goals are achievable. Thank you again, Merrick, and thank to your colleagues for your unwavering support.
A couple questions for Mr. Kostin. First of all, do you have any reaction to the leak of these internal U.S. intelligence assessments on Ukraine? And the second question, in terms of your collaboration with the United States in pursuing these Russian war criminals, it's my understanding there's been some frustration with the sharing of intelligence from both the Pentagon and intelligence agencies. Can you tell us what you would like to see the United States doing in terms of intelligence sharing?
Thank you for both of these questions. First of all, with regard to our accountability efforts, this leak has no any influence on our work. We are united to go ahead to making all perpetrators accountable for all war crimes committed on Ukrainian soil against Ukraine and against Ukrainians. For the second question, we are talking extensively about the possibility of sharing of intelligence information to investigate and prosecute specific war crimes committed by Russians. We are on the way. We have, from my point of view, very fruitful progress with regard to getting the specific information we need. I'm very optimistic in this regard. I would not disclose the details, of course, but once again, I'm very optimistic with this. We see full commitment to help us when whatever is possible with regard, of course, to all restrictions and limitations in order to obtain necessary pieces of evidences to finish the cases of specific war crimes committed where we, for instance, as Ukrainian authorities, has no access to crime scene. I would tell you that once again, this work is ongoing, and I'm very optimistic with regard to getting more information from our friends and allies.
Can you just kind of lay out what this is going to look like in terms of when Americans can expect to see prosecutions be brought? Is there ever a realistic chance that we're going to see a Russian war criminal in a courtroom facing these charges? And a separate question for you. We haven't heard you react since the Manhattan DA brought charges against former President Donald Trump. President Trump has said that the Justice Department was involved in that. He's accused of you personally of working with Bragg to bring him down. I just want to see, has the DOJ been involved in that whatsoever? Is there anything you can say about that?
So on the second question, you all know me well enough to know that I don't comment on Justice Department investigations. I certainly don't comment on ongoing investigations in other jurisdictions. On the first question, I think I've said this before, with respect to crimes against Americans, which we have our own jurisdiction for, we have been making good progress with respect to some suspects, and so that investigation is going very well. You know, on the longer-term question of war criminals and when they might see justice, we have a very long memory, as I know that Ukraine does as well. And these things tend to not work out very well for the people who commit these crimes and are prosecuted. So I can't say anything. I wouldn't expect anything to happen tomorrow, except for people who are found in Ukraine or found in the United States. But in the long run, we expect justice to be done.
Great, thank you.
Oh, okay. She's in charge.